Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Sam Sugar, and today we are recording yet another victim video. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Elena Stainbrook. Elena, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sam.
You're welcome. So, as we do in all of these little exercises, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where do you live, etc., etc.?
Okay, I live in a suburb of Cleveland, Brunswick, Ohio. I've lived in Ohio my whole life, as did my grandmother, Mary, who was the first victim here, who I love dearly. We had more of a mother-daughter relationship. We were super close, and my grandmother only had my mom, who was her only child, her daughter, and she moved to Florida when I was 18, right before I graduated high school. She moved. Am I still with you?
Yeah,
okay,
keep going, sure.
I wasn't sure. So
this is a
anyways,
two-state issue. It's Ohio and Florida.
It overlaps. It's ironic how much it overlaps. It really is.
So how did this all start? What was the precipitating factor?
Well, what happened is my mom lost. Well, you're asking me what happened to start this. My mom moved to. What happened to start this was my mom moved to Ohio because she lost her job, and her and my sister and my nephew were going to be evicted. So my grandma and her husband moved them up here. They paid all their moving expenses. They moved them up here. They saved them basically. And the conditions were because my mom worked in the medical field. She's a physician. Well, she's not practicing anymore. She was a physician assistant. She lost her job, and she had many jobs. She's had many jobs she's lost, but she lost her job, and so they came up here. And the pretense was supposed to be that she was supposed to help them out. Well, you know, in a long story, there's a lot of details, but my grandma's husband passed away, and I speculate. I don't even know if I'm going to say that. I speculate how quickly he passed away when he went into hospice.
So you suspected some kind of foul play?
Yeah, I suspect foul play. And there was a lot of red flags and bad, gut feelings. And this is why people should not ignore gut feelings. And I don't anymore. But you have bad gut feelings and your mind talks you out to be like, no, that can't happen. That can't happen. But here I found out that he had a safe full of money. And she's very money oriented, very obsessed, very greedy. She's very entitled. And I think she was actually jealous of my grandmother and I's relationship because we were really close. We had that bond. She trusted me. We trusted each other. We talked to each other all the time, with each other all the time. So we had that bond. So when he passed away, and then it seemed like my grandma she was starting to have memory issues, like mild dementia, I would say. And I tried to talk to her husband about it. And he was pretty defensive. And I wish we would have, now in hindsight, I wish we would have come up with a better plan for my grandma, because she really emotionally, obviously broke down from losing him. And there were things that she was saying they weren't making sense. And also I would like to add that there was things that she kept from me regarding her relationship with my mother, there was always turmoil there. They never got along really well.
So like so many cases, sounds like there was discord in the family.
Yes, discord and dysfunction,
yeah.
Which I think should be it's
a red flag.
What happened? Yeah, it should. Anytime that there's a dysfunction or any kind of pattern like that, it should be looked into a little bit extra.
Okay.
Let's just say that.
So who took the first big step to
So what happened was my grandma broke down. Well, and mind you, so what happened was the first big step. Well, one time they had my mom leave because they accused my mom of stealing something. Well, this big breakdown was after my step-grandfather passed away. And my grandma was saying that my mom stole her hearing aids and took them to a pawn shop. And she was actually calling me and saying, Elena, I want you to look up in the phone book and call pawn shops. I'm like, Grandma, I'm not doing that because I'm like, she's been with me the whole time. She doesn't have any of your hearing aids, you know, I'm like, she doesn't have your hearing aids. So she ends up like calling the police because she didn't want my mom to come in the house because she was so insistent that my mom had the hearing aids. The police came, she ended up going to the hospital. My mom ended up having her bakery acted. And here while we were in the hospital, there was her brother, who didn't have the right motives, was, you know, trying to get what he could out of her. And it raised a whole bunch of flags. He was trying to get money. And
So the Baker Act, for people who are listening outside of the state of Florida, the Baker Act is an involuntary hospitalization for a minimum of 72 hours in a holding facility where typically people who are Baker Acted, including those who might be drunk or on drugs or whatever, are medicated immediately, and
right.
then occasionally, when they're really heavily medicated or over-medicated, they wind up magically in guardianships.
Yes, and I'm seeing this, so because I'm going to tell you how it really overlaps. I'm going to try to go through the story quickly, but I was really advocating for my grandma. Nobody would even talk to my mom without my approval. So of course I feel tremendous guilt, and all the psychological and emotional games my mom has played with me since my grandma passed away. I can only imagine what she was doing to my grandma while she was supposedly taking care of her. So, but my mom was, to just fast forward, not go through every single detail, my mom was making her get these, and using her medical influence, mind you, to get these risperidone or risperidone injections, which are
Atypical antipsychotics that can, within 24 hours, make any elderly person a zombie.
yes, very much so. And that's what I believe my mother wanted. She wanted her to get control. My mom was upset that I was the beneficiary on the will. So she was trying to get her to do a new will.
So severe family dysfunction, multi-generational
yes.
family dysfunction. Well, if
Correct.
there was ever a setup, this is it. Correct. So what happened?
So what happened is, I believe, and my grandma did not want her to be guardian. Okay, so well, what happened, we had to go into emergency guardianship. I'm going to back up. So what happened is, when all this was happening, my grandma's bakery acted. She was very aware, and I was honest with social workers. I'm like, she knows all of her stuff. She's mild cognitive impairment here, but she needs help. And I said, I just want to make sure we do this the right way. I was trying to be her advocate to do it the right way. I had her go to an assisted living facility. Well, the hospital did too, but we had her go to assisted living facility so we could, you know, try to work together. And I kept on talking to the lady who ran it. I was the one who was making all the phone calls, making sure grandma was taken care of, making sure she was comfortable, taking her stuff, all that stuff. So I talked to the lady who ran it, and I said, you know, can we please have a family meeting and make sure grandma's involved in every aspect of this. I'm like, you know, I understand this is a big change for her. She might not want my mom involved, but I want her to be comfortable. You know, my mom.
And was this happening in Florida or Ohio?
No, this was happening in Ohio.
Ohio.
Yeah, this is happening in Ohio.
So tell me, at what point did the court get involved with this?
Well, they were made to get involved because when she was in the Baker Act in the hospital, so what happened is when she was Baker Act in the hospital, the social workers told us to apply for guardianship. Actually, that's what they recommended. They recommend my mom apply for guardianship. They said, well, isn't there anything else besides for guardianship? Everybody said, no, there's nothing else. Because I had no idea. Like,
now, you knew nothing about guardianship.
Nothing.
Did you know any of the requirements or the education?
No.
So a social worker just said, oh, apply for guardianship, but no one ever took the time to tell you what you really had as a responsibility if you were going to be the guardian.
Right. And I knew it was a huge undertaking. And I was telling the social worker that here's another thing that I was really super distracted. It was like a comedy of errors because I was super distracted because we had to sell our house and move to another house. And so I was super distracted with moving and getting everything ready and selling the house. And
so who became the guardian?
My mom. She's like, I know all about guardianships. You have to account for every penny. I did it for her. She did it for my grandfather's mother, because apparently my grandfather's mother had schizophrenia. But here's another ironic thing, Dr. Sam, is that my grandmother always said that my mom was going to steal everything from her from years before, like years and years before. She's like, your mother's going to steal everything from me. She wants to take control and do this.
It's funny how I hear that story over and over again. The person who
right?
winds up losing their rights predicted it a long time ago. They read the tea leaves correctly,
Wow.
and what they said was going to happen is exactly what happened. So now let's fast forward. Bring us up to date on what has happened in all of this.
So, well, what happened is my mom got a temporary guardianship. I was going to go to the court hearing. Stuff happened. I moved. I couldn't go. Like, there was just comedy of errors where I couldn't go to the court. But I was there for every other thing. Actually, the uncle, what really made it super emergency is my uncle signed her out of the assisted living place, like scaring her too. He wasn't fully looking out for her 100% because he was scaring her, saying, oh, they're going to lock you up. They're going to lock you up, which was not the truth. I wanted to come up with a plan for her. I think, the only one who really cared about her and her well-being. I didn't care about.
Well, let me ask you about that. How much money was involved that everybody was so desperate to get their hands on?
I'm not even sure exactly how much cash was in the house. I know for sure that my mom and my sister, because my grandma had a rental property and a home rental property, and then she had her home that she lived in. Well, she had a mortgage on her home, but she had owned other property, and she collected rent. So she would always keep the cash, and she had it for a long time. So she'd just keep the cash and keep the cash.
So there was some significant money, not to mention her Social Security, not to mention
the VA benefits.
And VA benefits. So she is ripe for the picking.
Yes, ripe for the picking. And my mom feels entitled, and she wants it all. But here I kept on saying, Grandma, I promise you the court's going to make her show an accounting. The court's going to make her show an accounting. She can't take your money. She can't take your money. She's going to have to show the court.
But that never happened, did it?
No, because according to the bank records, we won't even go to the cash and the assets. The bank records, she went through $60,000 in 9 months. And not only that, but very rapidly, because of these Risperidone injections, I believe my grandma had a stroke. And I kept on questioning my mom. I'm like, what? I'm like, she had a stroke. She can't even smile. I'm like, this is not normal. I'm like, you better, get her off of all that stuff you have her on. I'm like, immediately. She's like, oh, I am. But she wouldn't acknowledge the stroke for whatever reason. I don't know why, but she wouldn't acknowledge it. But I'm like, this is a stroke. And I noticed she kept on telling everybody and her health just declined immediately. She just went,
and how long ago has she been dead?
August 21st, 2016.
Now, okay, that's nearly 3 years.
Nearly 3 years.
And is this case still dragging on?
Yes, there's nothing. I've begged and begged, because unfortunately I didn't see the writing on the wall until like the very end. And it wasn't just because my grandma was dying. It would have been any time I just happened to find out the truth of what was going on, because the handyman that they had helping ended up entering a romantic relationship with my mother, and he ended up slipping and telling me, your mom's got all the cash and locked up in a room. She's got all the valuables and she's trying to take it from you.
So did the court ever get involved in a positive way? Were you complaining to the court? Did your lawyers do anything? Did you tell the judge about this stuff?
Oh yes, I can't even tell you. I wrote the judge a ton. I did all the work. I did all the work for my attorney. I did all the work for the prosecutor.
And so what were you told? Why did no one listen to you?
Well, first of all, why wouldn't anybody listen to me? Well, because they wanted to, the main point is they wanted to blow it off as a mother-daughter, grandmother issue, rather than the core issue of it being an elder abuse and then a mother-daughter abusive situation, because she was psychologically and emotionally and financially abusing me then.
So did you report this to law enforcement?
I did immediately.
What did they do?
Nothing. I begged them. I said, please, I do want to press charges. I said, I don't want her to go to jail per se, but I said, she should never be able to take care of anybody else again. It's just
So
because
who else did you try to go to? Did you go to
the
Adult
court.
Protective
Yeah,
Services?
I went to Adult Protective Services. They pretty much laughed me off because my grandma passed away, and I even tried to stay for myself, and they said, "Yeah, you're kidding me, right?" They
So
just laughed me off.
the court knew about this, Adult Protective Services knew about this, lawyers all knew about this. Did you receive any kind of support for these complaints, or was everybody just happy, leave things as
No,
the, nothing?
no. And I got myself and this is what really stinks too. And then you learn the hard knock truth in the way of life is that I was so like desperate to find an attorney that I just went to, I mean, I did research, but I was like so quick to try to get somebody. And he was a good attorney. I'm not going to say he wasn't a good attorney, but once he realized there was the mortgage on my grandma's house and everything, his interest went down, way down.
Translate, when there wasn't enough money for him to make enough, he
Right,
lost interest. Wow,
right,
that is
exactly.
so typical.
Yes,
So
and I had already
here you
signed.
are.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. I had already signed an agreement with him. I mean, under a contract because my mom had stolen the will that, and we had enough support that we would win for sure, which we did. But I still signed with him and I had to owe him a whole bunch of money already. So couldn't afford to lose. I mean, we couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford to go to another lawyer. People like, you could fire your lawyer anytime you want. It's not
Yeah.
that easy.
No, it's not that easy and it's awfully expensive.
It
So
is.
as you look back on this now,
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you give to people who don't know anything about guardianship?
Don't avoid guardianship at all costs.
And what about for people who are in guardianships? What advice or having the kind of battles you did? What did you learn from your battle?
That the court system really doesn't help you. And the accounting that you think that the guardian has to provide, it really isn't there. And especially with the rush emergency guardianship situation, that my mom didn't file any of the assets or anything, or there was no bond. So that was a big thing because there was no bond.
Oh, wow. And that was in Ohio.
Yes, because there was no bond. My attorney didn't want to go in and file exceptions because there was no reason to. But she went through $60,000 in 9 months, and there was no huge medical or anything like that.
Well,
There
that's
was not
60,000 that you know of.
that I know of. Right?
Yeah, but you presume there was more because she was hoarding cash.
Correct. And I know for a
Um,
fact. Yeah.
yeah, so, when I do these videos, people ask me, what are you trying to accomplish here? And I guess my answer is, I want to put a face to these court case numbers. I want people to see what this does to people when you take away a loved one's rights, and in your case, complicated by an intergenerational problem, the
Right.
impact that it's had on you personally and your family. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not as emotional, but right now because it's been like a few years, I've healed a lot. I mean, in hindsight, it's been a very spiritually positive experience for me to go through what I went through, but for a long time it wasn't. I mean, I was psychologically affected horribly. I was a mess. I couldn't even talk to any professional without breaking down and crying. The guilt I felt for allowing my mom to do, because I essentially she used me essentially to get access to my grandma. So it was a horrific experience. I mean, I was, it was brutal. So ironically enough, because nobody would listen to me, that she would try this again, which I knew she would. She's going after my grandfather now in Florida, and my aunts are trying to battle her in
And
Florida
I'm
right now.
sure, as you know, I'm from Florida, and I'm sure she'll be able to be successful given our well-known history in this state. Um, it's a really horrible thing to listen to stories like this. And one of the things I want to point out to our viewers is all of the national agencies and the Senate Special Select Committee all say that the biggest abusers of wards are family members.
Yes.
And in your case, that is exactly the case.
Right. And
What
it's,
they, but what they
sorry, go ahead.
don't say is that family members, when they come into this system with less than honorable intentions, because the courts do absolutely nothing to monitor them. And I think that's the point of this video. The court failed you. The
Failed me,
court,
failed my grandmother. It failed times 100, nothing. I mean, I even tried to have my lawyer file something on the guardianship. Oh, and by the way, I just want to add this, sorry, that the court actually helped my mom with her accounting. She couldn't get it in, and she still didn't balance it up, and it still got closed. It's totally ridiculous. It's a joke. It's a joke. The accounting system, all of it's a joke. So if you think that the court's going to help you and, you know, make the person accountable, not always, definitely not.
tell me why you think the court doesn't do a better job.
For money. I mean, for money because you know, and my mother only had temporary guardianship, but what she ended up doing was the attorney she was paying, which was a very good attorney, she paid him, and they ended up going to it was a crazy thing, but my grandma ended up wanting to go back to geriatric psych because I think she knew that they were trying to get her to sign a power of attorney, which you're not supposed to do that when you're in guardianship.
Oh, it's completely forbidden.
It's completely forbidden. And they went to geriatric psych. Her attorney took my mom up there, and they went and got the power of attorney,
Knowing that
they're
not supposed to, it's a felony. But there's
nobody
no
would do anything.
That's
Nobody
right.
would do anything. I tried saying, I'm like, how is this? I mean, I was just flabbergasted. The more I found and the more like support that nobody would give, I was like, you have to be kidding me. I mean, it was a real eye opener. It was a real eye opener because people just don't know. You trust the courts way too much. And they're not always, I mean, yes, they help you to a degree, but not the way that they should. And I mean, I think attorneys should be accountable too. If they don't turn in or get approval for things, then they have to pay fees. I think they should make them accountable.
And in your case, there was no bond either. So, well, sad to say, your story is not at all unfamiliar or unusual. Any last words for our viewers?
No, just I would love to be a part of changing the system if there's a way to. And you know, I've written government officials. I would be willing to go speak to them. I wrote the U.S. Department of Justice. I've written everybody. I mean, so I would be willing. And I think that there just needs to be more awareness, more transparency, more social work, more investigation or interviews with people before they just give guardianship to people. And I think the court system here was relatively, I think it just fell in like bad circumstances, I think, but I think a lot of the court systems from what I hear are super scandalous.
Well, on that note, we'll end. I want to thank you
Okay.
very much and wish you the very best.
Thank you. And thank you for all you do for this cause, Dr. Sam. It's a very important one.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.